Good evening. Hey, hi, it's Sharona. You're watching The Extra Point. We come to you live every Friday night via the National Gridiron Network, www.nationalgridironnetwork.com. Be sure to jump on there and check out all the latest articles and all the other great shows that are being produced. I just wrote an article for NGN where I talked about Daryl Washington and his latest suspension, how the NFL avoided once again dealing with that little tricky violence against women issue. Be sure to check that out. I want to hear your thoughts on that. I'm joined tonight by GREG BARBER, who is this New Orleans Saints writer for football.com. Greg's been with me before on this, not really a podcast, more of a video cast now, a webcast, and he's going to be talking to me. We're doing a draft, an NFL draft wrap-up. He was on here before on my pre-draft show talking about what he thought that the Saints would or should do, and so I'm excited to be talking to him about what they actually did. Greg, thanks once again for joining me. Be sure to introduce yourself and tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter.
Sure. GREG BARBER. You can find me on Twitter at IntenseGB. I am the New Orleans Saints writer for football.com, so feel free to drop by and see some of the articles and things I've written. Also, as you know, I'm a diehard bleeding New Orleans Saints fan, so yes, I do know the team pretty well.
We do know that, and I need to get you and Scott back on here, and Tony Dunn back on here, and have another NFC South roundtable, because that was pretty fantastic. You guys did an excellent job, and it got a little bit of a heated debate, but that's good. We're all passionate about the game of football, and we love to talk about our respective teams, and so there's nothing wrong with that. Well, let's go ahead and get started. A lot to talk about. When we were here before, we did talk about the fact that the Saints there were some positions that they needed to address. Do you feel like that they adequately addressed their situation?
Actually, they have. I think it's almost to a more, now you worry about who you cut instead of who you need to get.
And that's a good problem to have.
Always a good problem to have when it comes down to it. I mean, the signing of Jonathan Goodwin at the center spot kind of adds some insurance that Lolito should falter, or if he doesn't live up to what we're hoping. That you have Goodwin there, but then it's
that's such a great story too, Greg. I really want to talk to you about that when we get into it. Yeah, that's such a great story.
But I mean, overall, I think cornerback position is we got quite a few players there. We got quite a few players in the receiver spot. In all those positions there. So I don't see any holes. Now it's just a matter of just figuring out who do you weed it down. What 53 is going to be the best, and it's going to get us to the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. Very tough division that the Saints are in. I had this discussion. I had the guys from Tony and the guys from Cat Chronicles with me last week. I in the division ranked them last in terms of their draft because I like Kelvin Benjamin. But he just comes with some question marks for me, and there were some other things. Now, Trey Turner is probably my favorite pick for them. I thought that was, a really nice pick. But we talked about, how tough the division was and how how it's going to be very difficult, really, because the Falcons should be better this year. They had a pretty nice draft. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what about them? So, so it's going to be fun to watch this year to see, what actually does, transpire. Let's go ahead and get into the draft. Let's talk about your number one draft pick, Brandon Cooks. I know that you're a big fan. Give us your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm excited to see him and to see what he can do. I know he hasn't been in OTAs because of his commitments to OSU, to his school.
Right.
So he'll be back in time for training camp. But so I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. Just I mean, from the film I studied and just everything I've seen, he can do. Like I said, I mean, this is a guy right here. I think that they can really do a lot of work through, but it also is going to open up things for other receivers. So I mean, you should be
Yeah,
seeing guys like Kenny Stills and Marcus Colston getting a lot more
right.
passes thrown to them. And you got a couple other wide receivers like if Joe Morgan does come back, or even Robert Meacham himself.
I was
Uh,
going to ask you about Robert Meacham. Where does he
sure.
fit in the scheme of things now that they've got a new guy in the mix?
I'm almost wondering, to tell you the truth, he's one of the guys who I almost think that actually may not make the team.
That's what I was thinking too.
I was thinking that he may not make
Former
the team.
Vol, and obviously Sharona's very familiar with him. He
Yeah,
played for her alma mater, University of Tennessee, but
yes, he did.
kind of an interesting career for that young man.
Yes.
Did okay in New Orleans.
Hmm.
Went to San Diego. I believe it was San
It
Diego.
went
Got
to
a
San Diego.
pretty nice contract. I was actually shocked. He
Yeah,
got
me too.
he got that contract. Didn't do anything there, and
No.
ended up back with the Saints.
Right, but I mean, even last year, I kind of thought because when he was in New Orleans before, he was kind of a deep threat. He was the guy that can get open and get down deep
That's what
downfield.
yeah.
But I noticed last year it wasn't that same deep threat that he was
No.
before. So you can see that it kind of caught up with him a little bit. And besides, anyway, there's another kid. I mean, there's one that they're looking at, Brandon Coleman, who's an undrafted
Right,
free
right.
agent, the 6'6". But there's another kid who's actually kind of opening some eyes in training camp, from what I'm hearing, Centavius Jones from a small school. And I've
Yeah.
seen a little film on him, and he actually looks good from what I saw on film. So I'm interested in seeing both if he and Coleman in turn, end up coming out to being,
I was kind of
the players
surprised
that we're
Brandon
expecting.
Coleman didn't get drafted, weren't you?
Me too. Because I looked at him, I looked at his numbers and stuff, and I was like, somebody would have took a shot on him.
You
I
would
mean,
have thought.
yeah, I mean him, and I tell
And
you
he
the other one
looks
I
the
thought was
part.
surprising was Antonio Richardson, also your
Right,
Tennessee
right. Yeah,
tackle there. I
yeah.
thought, and those were the two guys that baffled me in the whole draft. That were like, how did they not get drafted? I don't,
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a little
Well, with
interesting.
Tiny, it was obviously there were major concerns about his knee and his
Got to do
medicals,
it.
and yeah. So
The-
I
And
really feel
Coleman,
badly for him. We were not, I mean, you just never know, right? You never know what
yep.
teams really think. They're not obviously going to give accurate information, not if they're
No,
smart. But
no.
yeah, I was kind of surprised at that too.
Yeah,
Very,
Coleman.
very,
Coleman had the same thing. Yep.
yeah. Yeah,
I'm
very
sorry.
interesting no, 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 you're fine. Very interesting wide receiver battles for the
Hmm.
Saints this year. I'm kind of excited to
Hmm.
see what happens there. But obviously, you would think that they would want to get Cooks involved early and often.
Yeah, I can see it. Because it's going to be interesting to see how Payton uses him. Because Payton may use him a little bit in the backfield as a running back. He may use him. You might see him on double reverse plays and all sorts of things.
Yeah, I
So
was going to
he's
ask you if you thought he might take that Darren Sproles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think exactly that's kind of the idea that they may have in mind. But he might not he won't be as much a runner, but he
right.
probably will do the double reverses. The fact that he can take a 5 yard pass and take it for 65 yards in a heartbeat, that's gonna be huge. And it's
It's
gonna cause
exciting.
yeah, and it's gonna cause defense to have to key on him. In the meantime, it opens up things I think for guys like Stills and for other players that can get open themselves, and he can help create that separation that they didn't have before.
Yeah, you're right. Sean Payton, offensive genius, really good at taking his skill players and
Hmm.
putting them in good positions to succeed. And so it's very exciting to think about what that young man might be able to do. I
Hmm.
bet Drew Brees is just chomping at the bit. Can't wait to really
Oh,
get him in and work him out and get him involved.
I'm sure he's very excited, and so I mean he's pretty much been stating that he is excited to work with him and see what he can do, and so I'm looking forward to seeing that too as well. I think everyone is.
Yeah, the Saints offense should be with their they've addressed their offensive line woes.
Yes.
You and I are far higher um, Armstead than Scott was, but I think that he's going to be a fantastic left tackle. Really came
Yeah.
on last year, and
Yes.
like you said, with they addressed the center, and they've got some
Mhm.
other guys in there.
Mhm.
So the offensive line should be improving, and they've
Yes.
added some more guys, and so it's kind of exciting to watch. But the
Mhm.
big surprise from last year was their defense, and they sure
Mhm.
didn't ignore it, did they? As you
No.
can see from their
No.
second round draft pick.
Yeah, with Stanley John Baptiste, who's actually from what I understand is coming along very, very well, a little bit ahead than what they expected.
Yeah, I saw
And
that. Some
and
really good reports out of OTAs.
yeah, so if that's the case, you think about it with him, you already got Keenan Lewis, you have Champ Bailey, who's actually been doing very well in camp also. And
Yeah, I
so
was going to ask you about Champ. I'm glad that you
yeah,
brought that up.
yeah, Champ has actually been doing very well. So far, all reports I've heard, everybody's been very impressed about how he's been playing. So, because I was optimistic, I was cautiously
Right,
optimistic
yeah.
because I knew the last couple of years he
He's
had
the
kind of had
champ.
some issues. Right, but he's healthy, and as long as he's healthy, it seems like that he's going to be a solid player.
Where's he
Uh,
going to play? Do you think that they're going to put him in the slot or
I think he's going to be on the outside. I think that's
do you?
exactly what's going to happen. Yeah, and you may actually see, who knows, if Baptiste actually advances well enough, you could see a battle between him and Corey White. I think for that slot,
Okay,
to play the
interesting.
slot. Yeah, because
All right.
Corey White, I thought played. He's probably better in the slot than he is as far as the second defensive back, but he's probably better in that against that slot receiver. Because I thought Corey White did very well in the slot, but as an outside receiver, was up and down.
You really can't have too many good cornerbacks, can you?
No, because of the fact of injuries alone. Because
Yeah,
they had Jabari Greer went down with that gruesome injury
I
in
know.
San
He's
Francisco,
still
and
unsigned, isn't he?
no, he's not with anyone. No, so I mean, I don't know if he's fully 100% back yet, or ready
Right,
to play, and that may be the case. You
probably.
know, so he may still need a little more time because that was a pretty nasty injury.
It really
Um,
was.
Yeah, and the other one is, I mean, like Kenny Vaccaro himself, who had gotten hurt, and
Right.
there were other players who had gotten hurt here and there. So you need to load that backfield up as much as you can for guys who can play wherever you need them.
Yeah, I saw the report. There were actually a couple of good reports talking about the cornerback position, and I
Hmm.
wanted to get your thoughts on Champ because he is the kind of player, a class from all appearances. Of course, you never know
Hmm.
what these guys are like in real life, but from all appearances, he is a class act,
Yes.
and he has been such an all around great player for so
Yes.
long. You hate to see
Yes, he
those
has.
kind of guys go out. Knowing when to hang up your cleats is hard.
Yes. And the way we looked at it too is that, I mean, even if he wasn't as much as a guy on the field that can start or necessarily play on the field, his presence in the locker room to be able to kind of talk with some of the
Yeah,
other
leader.
backs, and I mean other cornerbacks, and teaching them some of the teaching the fundamentals and what he knows. I think that helps, so he can come from a leadership perspective. But I think for the most part, I think from the looks of it, I think as long as he stays healthy, I think you'll see him starting. But if he does get hurt, then you may look, like Stanley John Baptiste, who may actually kind of fit in that role if he's well, as ahead as they say.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to see how he does
Me
when
too.
they can really put the pads on and really,
Hmm.
get in there and hit and duke it out and stuff.
Yes,
Will you be going to training camp? I know that you're not, you're in Florida,
I'm
right?
in Florida. Yeah, I probably won't be going to any training camps, but heaven knows if I end up finding a way to go, I'm definitely going to do it.
I
But
hear ya.
I know I will see the Saints when they come here in Tampa Bay, but I actually want to see a couple other games I want to go to as well. So I'm gonna see, if future holds, I may go to those, but I know I'll be at the one in Tampa Bay.
No third round draft pick.
Mhm.
Let's go ahead and talk about the fourth round draft pick. I'm
Mhm.
probably going to mispronounce this. Is it Kyrie Fort?
No, you're right, Kyrie
Okay.
Ford.
All right,
From the looks,
linebacker out of
mhm.
California.
Yeah, yep, he's looking healthy so far and is doing fine.
Didn't
No,
get a very good grade as a draft pick.
No, he didn't. And but it's a lot of guys that sometimes don't get good grades, but then they end up,
It turned out
actually
fine.
turning out very fine. Yeah, they turn out fine. And he doesn't have to come in as a starter right away. So you're looking at it, even if he sat a year or two on the bench, kind of come in on certain packages and certain things, and the fact that he had the ability to cover, I think that's the reason why they got him, because he
Okay.
he was mostly as a kind of a cover linebacker, who could cover
Cover
tight ends.
linebacker. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's where his skill was. So you may see him on,
So is he
passing
going to
downs
play
and coming in
inside or out?
inside. Actually, he'll be
Okay.
inside. So he'll
Okay.
be there with Hawthorne
All right.
and Curtis Lofton. He'll be in with them, and he'll be duking it out, I guess, with guys
Refresh
like
my
Humber.
memory. What's the word on Paris Harrells?
He's actually playing. He's there. He should
Okay.
be. He should be. I think he's in. I don't think he's sitting out. If I remember right, he is actually practicing, or
Okay.
he's definitely
Okay.
there.
Good.
So,
Good. I
and
know that
I
the
like him.
yeah, the Saints I thought did really well with that trade. I thought it was a good
Hmm.
trade for both teams
Me too.
actually.
Right.
And I'm of course another former Vol. I'm very happy to see him doing well in New Orleans. So,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because he sets that edge and everything. So I do like Paris, especially in that
yeah.
run game. I think is a
Yeah.
big help there. And then the fact that we got Victor Butler back, now we
All
kind of
right.
can see that he's going to be that extra pass rusher along with Gillette on the outside. So it's going to be interesting to see, where they fit in, and it may get a chance too that they play a true 3-4 because they really didn't play a 3-4 last year.
Is this new guy going to push anybody for a spot, or is he going to have to make his way on special teams and then contribute as he can?
He's probably going to contribute most of his special teams, but I don't know. I think when the preseason comes, that's where you kind of know whether he's really going to push
Right.
anybody for a spot. And if he pushes anybody, it's going to be pushing Hawthorne. If as far as a starter position, because I don't think Curtis Lofton's going anywhere since he makes most of the defensive calls and kind of the leader on that defense.
Okay. He wears the mic, I guess.
Yeah, he's the mic. He's usually the mic. Yes.
Who's the other guy that they have wearing the defensive mic helmet?
Hawthorne is the other one. Yeah, David
Okay.
Hawthorne. Yeah, David Hawthorne are your two starting middles, and then they also have Ramon Humber is another one that I like a lot, and then the other kid is Kevin Reddick, who's another one that was a undrafted free agent last year that
Oh,
made the
okay.
team. Yeah, out of I think out of North Carolina, and he actually showed some stuff too. I do like him, but I think he's kind of probably going to do the same thing as him, where he'll come in and have to work on special teams and all that, and then just work his way in when he can.
Yeah, it's always to me, it's always fun and kind of heartwarming to see the undrafted free agents
Hmm.
do so well. And
Yes.
look at Doug Baldwin in Seattle, just with
Hmm.
that extension that he just got. So yeah, it's always great stories, and
Hmm.
I like to root for good storylines. So yeah,
Oh,
that's yeah.
oh yeah,
So
definitely. Sometimes I'm more excited about the undrafted free agents than I am the drafted free agents because you
yeah,
always
right.
find those hidden gems, and and as many times as I said before, New Orleans has always been lucky to find
They are
those.
very good at that, especially at the
Yeah,
running back position or
yeah,
in other skill positions too.
yeah.
Really,
They
though.
actually, yeah, they have another kid that may, who I don't know how he's going to turn out. Tim Flanders, who's another
Okay.
undrafted free agent at running back. You might have to see where he goes, see what happens there because they already got two others who are undrafted free agents.
Now, interesting. Well, we were going to talk about undrafted free agents. So I'm glad that you're sprinkling that in because I
Hmm.
was curious if you thought that there were people, guys who were, possibly good stories there, good storylines
Hmm.
there for people to watch and
Yeah,
maybe root for. It's so easy to root for those kind of guys.
yeah. Yeah, they have a couple players. And I've been reading up on a few guys. Flanders is one. Another one is I think his name is Ham. He's a tight end. He's about 6'4", 6'5", and he actually did. I understand he's made a couple impressive catches
Oh,
at the tight
cool.
end position. And
Let's talk about the tight end position real quick.
sure, yeah,
Jimmy
absolutely.
Graham obviously not in OTAs because he's
Hmm.
not signed, and there's still a lot of questions about that situation.
With the hearing.
What is the backup plan at tight end?
Well, his right now his hearing is between the 17th and 18th, I believe, that they're going to have it to whether he's going to be a tight end or is he going to be registered as a
What
wide receiver. I
are
don't
there
know
any
exactly.
talks going on right now? Are they possibly going to resolve that?
I think they're waiting. I just think they're waiting until the designation comes. Because I think for Graham, I think what he's looking at is like this. I don't want to negotiate too soon and leave money on the table. You know what I mean? It would make sense for him to negotiate too soon, especially in the fact that if he can get
He's
a
probably not unhappy to be hanging out, doing his thing, not being
yeah.
OTAs.
Oh, agreed. Yeah,
And the team's keeping their whatever money they might stand to lose or to negotiate away. I mean, they're keeping that and earning that interest, right?
right, exactly. So, we're talking about a $5 million difference. So that does what it can do is it'll end up making a few players end up restructuring their contracts. You know,
How much cap money do they have right now?
1.9 million when I last checked.
Oh, that's not. Yeah, they're gonna have to clear some money.
Yeah, so they'll have to clear some money if he goes up, because if he goes
Do they
up
have
against
all their
that
draft
12,
picks signed?
yeah, all the picks were signed pretty quickly,
Okay.
very quickly. They signed them all, and that didn't take that much. I think it was only 1.7 million or something like that. It was
Oh
only like
yeah.
a short amount.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a very low amount from what I remember the chart from what they signed up, and then also with
Interesting.
Goodwin's contract, they don't have to pay it all within this season. So his contract, they can
Spread
spread it
out.
out. They can spread it out. I think it's over a couple
Yeah.
seasons. So I mean that kind of those they know how to manipulate the cap, and
Yeah.
they're very good at that too.
Five
So
million's a lot of money, but in the larger scheme of things, is it that much money? You would think that they would be able to work that out.
yeah, they can work it out. I mean, because they know they got contracts. I mean, what you got, Drew Brees contract, you got guys like Curtis Lawson. I think even what Jahari Evans. I think he's getting close to 11 million this year.
Oh
So I
wow.
mean, they got a couple players they probably can because if they sign take the money and put it into a signing bonus, they can spread it out over the rest of their contract. So whatever's left on the contract, they can spread that out. So if it's $1 million, it won't be $1 million hit here. It can be only 250,000 if they got 3 or 4 more years left on their contract or whatever it is.
Very
So
cool.
so that so they have ways to, as far as arranging it around and making it work.
Okay. Well, awesome. All right. Well, I was kind of curious about that, so I'm glad that we got a chance to talk
Hmm.
about it. Your first fifth round draft pick. Let me get that out. Let me spit that out. Fifth round draft pick was sort of intriguing to me. A guy from Alabama
Yeah.
with a little bit. You seem to like those little ties to UT here, Greg. I'm wondering about the Saints, or should we call them UT Cajun South or not? But obviously, I'm talking about Vinny Sunseri,
Hmm.
who's got a father
Uh-huh.
who is in coaching and
Yes.
who
Sal Sunseri.
who had a brief cup of tea with some SEC schools. So, what do you think about
Hmm.
this one?
I've always liked Sunseri, so I've always liked him as a player. And I think a lot of people were kind of wondering why we even got another one, because we seem pretty set at safety
Yeah,
between
it was
Ball,
sort of
Vaccaro,
odd.
Bird. But I mean,
But
I
then,
think
but then Jarius Byrd had surgery.
yeah, he had surgery, and also too the fact that Rob Ryan likes to use the three safety. He likes to use three safeties in his
Yeah,
defense as well. So I mean, Sunseri can cover. Sunseri he's got a nose for the ball, so he's a little bit of a turnover. He can be a little bit of a turnover machine, and
yeah.
he's so
Well,
I,
and
I,
Kenny
I
Vaccaro went down last year. You never know what's going to
exactly.
happen injury-wise.
Exactly, and I mean that's usually on the back of my mind, because I know that many times that they'll get hit in a certain area. Sometimes the secondary, a lot of times, sometimes we end up becoming a mass unit in the middle of the season. Where it's nagging injuries, or you got guys
Yeah.
who are out for the year. So you're going to wish you had Sunseri there. So I mean, for me, I'm fine with having him there. And number two is the fact that he's a leader. He's a very smart guy. He can play, I think, both safety positions. Kind of and somebody put it as you know as that he's got that definitely got that mentality, and I think he can play in that Rob Ryan defense very well. So I
Well,
think
Rob
that he'll
Ryan
be good.
knows what he wants and what
Hmm.
works for him. And
Absolutely.
as we saw last year, such an amazing turnaround for the New Orleans defense. You know,
Hmm.
we talked about that through the course of the season. I'm really excited to see, what they do this year. There were several injuries, and I
Hmm.
forget. Refresh my memory. There was a big one early on.
Yeah, Victor Butler. Victor
Yeah,
Butler, linebacker. They had just brought him in from Dallas to be one of the outside linebackers. He was injured. Like I said, Jabari Greer got injured later in the
right,
season.
right.
Also, a couple other guys got injured as well. Because that's where why Paris Harrison
Coach
ended up
Harold
coming in
came in. Yeah,
Because
yeah,
of Butler. And
yeah,
then they had a few other injuries. I mean, man, Vilma just finally it came back late in the season and really didn't show anything.
yeah.
Will Smith really didn't. He got injured as well. So they had like a lot. They had a decimated injuries.
They were a
To the
mash
point,
unit.
yeah, a big time. So to a point to where you almost worry like, is this defense even going? I mean, is the defense going
They
to be
can
worse
field a
than
team.
last year?
Yeah,
Yeah, I know. Are they going to be worse than last year? I can't see that again. I mean, I don't want to see that again. You
yeah.
know,
Well, they
I
they played through it.
yeah, they did, and what it is. I mean, Ryan adjusted, and he used the
Yeah,
talent he had, went to a 4-2-5 defense, based a big nickel, and made it work.
yeah.
Played four down linemen instead of three, and it worked out. So he knew what the guys can do, and he what he had, and he made the best of it, and they ended up being like the number 4 defense in the league. So I mean, a lot of that comes down to just the fact that Ryan, unlike Steve Spagnuolo, Spagnuolo did not make adjustments. He didn't listen to the players. He wanted to do things his way, and that's
Right.
why they gave up so many yards. We knew it wasn't the talent as much as, I mean, we needed to upgrade in a little bit of talent there, but we knew that it wasn't as much talent when they had that horrible year as it
Hmm.
was just the fact that part of it ended up being the coaching, or just the players weren't there. So we didn't know. I mean,
Don't they call that 4-2? Do they call that the Mustang? I've seen it called something. Um,
yeah, they call it all sorts of things.
there's
I've
different
always been
names
on.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah, I've always just
yeah,
kind of called it a big nickel
yeah,
defense, because and so they played a little 3-4 during the season, but for the most part, there was mostly the 4-2-5.
yeah. Yeah, interesting. All right, well, let's talk about your second fifth rounder,
Mm-hmm.
and let me get his name. Ronald Powell, another
Ronald Powell.
linebacker, outside
Yep.
linebacker from Florida.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on him?
Well, basically, he's meant there to be a pass rusher. That's what he's looking for. I mean, this is a guy right here who was up there with Davian Clowney as one of the top high school picks coming into college, and just didn't totally live up to it. Part of it was injury. He had a couple of knee surgeries. One of them he had to replace, I guess, replace the cadaver in his knee, and
Yeah,
that was the issue there. So he never really got on track in school. But also the fact that he did get drafted, you got a guy now who's hungry to show that he can play.
that's true.
So I mean, if he turns out to be the pass rusher they're expecting, then I mean, hey, that's another. We always can use those. So
Yeah,
we can always use them, and I mean, Rob Ryan to find a way to get them on the field.
yeah.
So and then even from the film I saw with him, I didn't see any arguments there with the fact that he can play. And I mean, Florida had a rough team last year, but
Yeah,
it's so much talent on that team,
they're
so much
talented.
talent. Yeah, they
Mhm.
got a lot of talent on that team, on that college team. So you can imagine
Yeah.
that Powell definitely, if he can fit in, he played there. He'll be fine in the NFL.
A lot of Florida team players fell. I mean, you saw Telvin Smith fell to the
Mhm.
fifth round, and his
Mhm.
teammate Christian Jones didn't even, he
Yep.
went undrafted, and that was kind of a big shock too. I mean,
Yeah.
they're Florida State guys, but still, I said Florida teams, and
Yep.
so
Mhm.
kind of I thought that was because Florida is definitely known for a state that produces
Uh,
a lot of
yes, they do.
talent. So
Yes, they do. Yeah,
yeah.
they're up there as one of those top talent schools out there. Especially for colleges. That's what you want to hit Florida.
Oh yeah,
Georgia
right.
and some of those areas. Yep.
I mean, yeah, the smaller schools there get good talent. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, absolutely.
Blake Bortles.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a great example right there. Blake, that of a guy who probably could have played at Florida or played at Florida State, and he
Right.
ended up playing at
UCF.
UCL.
Mhm.
Pretty much when got into a BCS bowl game. I
Yeah.
mean,
And got and the number 3 overall
yeah,
pick.
yeah. So I mean, that tells you a lot for a
It
school
does.
that's like low on the food chain as far as Florida schools when it comes to college football. Nobody talks about UCF.
I just love to see that, though, don't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a great story because, I mean, it's the old saying goes, if you got the talent, they'll find you.
Oh
And,
yeah. Well, Khalil Mack,
oh,
another guy.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
another
From,
guy
yeah,
who.
University of Buffalo. Yeah.
So,
So, yeah, I mean, they're out there.
all right. Well, let's finish up with the draft and talk about the 6th round draft pick, and then
Okay.
we'll touch upon any other UDFAs you want to talk about, and then we'll get to some grading.
Okay.
So, I don't remember his name. Who is
Uh,
this?
uh, Tavon, I think
Tavon
it's,
Rooks,
yeah, Tavon Rooks. Tavon
offensive
Rooks.
lineman from Kansas State.
Yep, he's going to be a tackle, probably more or less playing right tackle instead of left. So I think he's going to be mostly a right tackle. From I haven't heard a lot of yes or no from him so far
Right.
about him so far. So I mean, you're
Didn't
probably going to
get a
hear
very
more
good draft grade.
to the point where when he was drafted, you couldn't even find him.
Yeah, it
You
was an
couldn't even
odd
find
pick.
him. Yeah, when they picked him, who? I was like, I haven't even. I mean, and I have been digging on draft boards for months, just like you have.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean? And I'm looking. I'm like, who is this dude? I can't even see. I mean, I try to Google him. Can't get a film.
Yeah, no,
Couldn't
I
get
remember.
anything.
I know people on Twitter were talking about that too. It was kind of funny, it was the Saints just drafted a guy nobody's ever heard of. Woo! Go Saints! Go,
Yeah,
and it was a GEU at the Go
yeah,
Saints. Right?
yeah.
But hey, it's their last pick, sixth
Yeah.
round. It's a nice spot to take a guy,
Well, they saw
a
something.
lineman that you
Yeah.
believe in, and you want to see if you can develop him. I don't
Well,
really have a problem with it. Do you?
no, because if you think about it like this too, they got to less. If you think about it, here's a kid who probably he's got size, and I mean, he played at Kansas State, so it's not necessarily he didn't play in a weak conference per se. He played in
Right.
a pretty competitive conference, so he played there. The way I look at it is that I think they can stash him if he goes practice squad. They can stash him, and then he can
Hmm.
sit there and kind of develop and grow on the practice squad for a couple
Right.
years. Or even if he makes a 53, he's on the bench and just they bring him in when they need him. But it just depends on what he shows.
Is
But at
he a
least
swing tackle? Can he play inside or out?
I think he can play both. I think he can play both.
Well,
So
you can't
I'm
have
not
too
totally
many of
sure.
those guys either.
No, no, they
Right?
have quite a few versatile guys. Because Lolito himself who can play guard,
Yeah.
he also plays center. And they have a couple other guys there that can play. That can switch around. Bryce Harris, I think Bryce Harris can play both tackles positions, and I think he also can play a little guard. So yeah, you always want because you're always going to carry a lot less linemen, especially when you're picking the player as far as players to play. I mean, when you're you have to sit. What is it, sit your 8 players? So, because you got to pick 46 or whatever. So you're only going to have probably about 5 or 6 linemen. You're probably going to have your lineman and one extra guy. So he's got to be able to fit wherever they need him.
All right. Well, let's talk about some grades, and then I definitely want to talk. I'm pulling the article up because
Uh
I want to talk about the Jonathan Goodwin
huh.
article
Okay.
that ESPN.com did. I thought that it was really good, and it was
Hmm.
kind of a heartwarming thing. But before we get there, let's talk about some grades. How would
Okay.
you? And for those who are watching, if you haven't heard my disclaimer, let me give it to you. Draft grades are completely useless,
Pretty much.
especially at this juncture, but they're fun. It's kind of
Yes.
fun to do it and then to go back,
Hmm.
like 2 years from now, come back and say, boy, was I stupid or boy, was I brilliant. So, let's go
Hmm.
ahead and do it anyway. Give us
Hmm.
your overall grade for the New Orleans draft.
I look at it at I'm a now. I said for today, as far as players they can plug in today and play, I put it as a B. And I think that, like the last time I said, for players 1 or 2 years down the line who are going to emerge and play be starters, I look at it more of a B. So I
Okay.
look at it as a C as far as players that can play today. Because I think Cooks, I think you can see some of Baptiste, and it may. and I'm not sure if anybody else you're going to see that much of. Now, I could be totally wrong.
Right.
I may be thinking this thing to be an age draft, by the time this year is up.
Well, you just
But
you
for the
never
most part,
know, and they don't know.
right. No, they don't. I mean, until you really see the guys on the field and go out there in preseason and see what they can do. But for the most part, for today, as far as this season, it's about a C.
Okay.
And I'm actually fine with that because we hit the spot. The players that need to play in the spots that we needed them to play in are playing, and I'm good there.
You and I have had this discussion, but for those of our viewers who didn't get to see that discussion, because it was for an NFL female show, we have a little bit of a different audience on this program. Give us your thoughts on what a typical, and by typical, I mean a draft where a team has, 6, 7, an average size number of draft picks. How many starters should a team expect to get from that class?
And I think initially, like the last time I said, I mean, I guess it depends on how many starters they actually need to avoid. I think if you can get 3 or 4 starters out of it, you actually had a pretty strong draft. The way I look at it. So and that may not necessarily mean that your first through 4th picks all starters.
Right.
Because many times your 5th and 6th round pick are your guys who end up starting, and
You
your 3rd
never
and 4th
know.
round picks get cut. In some cases. But for the most part, I think if you can get 3 or 4 starters out of a 7 pick draft, I think you did very good.
Oh yeah, I think that's a very strong draft. I think, I wonder if most teams are like, gosh, if we can get 2 or 3, we'll be satisfied with that.
Well, I think most teams for the most part, and most fans look at it like this: that first and that second round pick, those 2 right there, they're starting and they're playing well.
They better be.
Then we did fine. Those 2 right there are like no-brainers that they need to be starting and playing. Basically, and that's pretty much the mentality these days. Back many years ago, 10, 20 years ago, a first-round starter had time to grow into the position. These days, they got to hit the ground running. Yeah, they got to hit the ground running, and you kind of can understand why people think that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot of it has to do. Well, I mean, the league's changing, and the Ricky Wade scale, the contracts now are different, and they're the leash on coaches is not to me is not nearly as long in a lot of cases as it used to be, and so there's a lot of reasons for that. I think that ideally you would want your 3rd round draft pick to be a guy who would ultimately be a starter.
Yeah.
But
at least in rotation.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So, so a C right now, but you think it could develop into a B if everybody kind of develops and turns out the way that you expect. I think that's it's definitely a reasonable draft grade. I know the answer to this, but for those who might not, give us your favorite draft pick.
Wow, it probably will be Cooks because of the excitement that he may be able to bring. Because I think we thought the biggest problem with the Saints receivers, they weren't getting separation.
Right.
And I think that's the guy right there that I think a lot of people are kind of hanging their hat on and pinning that he will help bring that separation and kind of bring that explosiveness back to the offense.
If he becomes a superstar, will this draft class, because it is a little bit smaller, if he becomes a superstar, will this draft class be a success?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, but I tell you, Stanley John Baptiste, as much as everybody compared him coming in with the numbers with Richard Sherman, the height, the weight, I mean, even the speed and everything, he pretty much matched up. If he even comes up close to that level, to that kind of play, I mean, absolutely.
I think he's going to be great.
I do too. I do.
I really do.
I just want what I hope is that people. I just try to be patient with them. So
right.
I mean, I'm probably a little more patient with players. I'm not ready to cut a guy because he let an 80-yard touchdown go past him. All of a sudden, because I mean, believe me, if you had some people, there'd be an off.
They get paid too. The players on the other team get paid too.
Exactly, and but I if you've been on Twitter And
I know.
the guy blows one play.
And he's a bust. Worst
Yeah,
draft pick ever.
ever. Yep, absolutely. They got his bags packed and ready to drive to the airport. So I'm not one of those guys. I've never been. I've learned to be patient, I guess, because, like I said, being a football fan way back, you learn the guy's
Right.
going to develop and just going to come into their own when they do. And you just want to, you just want to do what you can to make sure it happens.
Yeah, yeah. Let's before we get to grades, we got go good. We're doing pretty good with time. Before
Yeah.
we get to comparing the Saints draft to the other teams in the division, and then we're going to talk about the NFC, and then
hmm
we'll talk a little bit about the AFC. I want to get your thoughts on a possible breakout candidate for this coming year, a player who's on the roster. It doesn't have to be a rookie, a
hmm
guy in this draft class. It could be anybody. But do you have a player that you're sitting here thinking, I really think this guy's going to break out. He's going to surprise a lot of people.
Well, let's see. I think a lot of people look at Kenny Stills, the wide receiver, as one, and I think that's very possible. The one I think that I would love to see, and I think that they really, really need to make this defense, to make this offense work, it would be Kyrie Robinson because at running back. Because if they can get that running back who's got that potential to go 800 to 1,000 yards in a season, you think about it. They get a 800,000-yard running back in that offense, it's over for everybody because nobody's going to be messing with them there because the fact that they can get that, because the fact that now it opens up the playbook for Sean Payton for play action plays and a lot of other things. So, they won't be as predictable in that sense. So,
Right.
I mean, Kyrie Robinson, Kyrie or, whoever at running back needs to be that breakout guy. But I think Kyrie has the potential. I mean, Bill Parcells kind of put it online when he got on Sean Payton's case during the playoffs when he said that he was this guy's like a Curtis Martin and you sitting him on the bench. He said, no, you got to play him. So Parcells called Payton out on that, and Payton started playing him, and he actually showed something. So, and I think he's got a
Oh
better
yeah, he did.
now.
Mhm.
Yeah, oh yeah. So he's got a better grasp of the playbook, and he understands where he needs to be, and I think he's understanding the protections a little more and things like that. And if he can do that and show that, and then the fact that he can, get that running game going, that's going to be a huge, huge difference for that offense. And I think people will see, the true greatest show on turf, as I like to
Oh,
say.
well, there you go. I can dig it. I'm down with it. Yep. It's going to be fun to watch, I think.
hmm
Let's talk about how the Saints stack up in
hmm
terms of what the other teams did in the division. If you
Okay.
had to line them up, this team had the best draft pick. This team had, and just in relation to the rest of the teams in the division, the
hmm
least best draft class. How would you do it?
Ooh, Tampa Bay probably Tampa Bay and Atlanta a big fight. I mean, as far as
To
the
be top.
top of, yeah, I'm probably gonna go.
Well, they both had high draft picks. They could get
Yeah,
some. Yeah.
yeah. Only thing about it is I'm gonna take Tampa Bay only because I think Mike Evans will turn out to be a better receiver in the first round as a better first round player in the round compared to, and if I'm right, they picked Rashid Hageman. Atlanta did.
They picked him in the second.
Oh, they picked him in the That's right. They picked
They
him. I'm
picked
sorry. That's right. That's right.
Jake
They picked
Matthews.
Jake Matthews, which was a very solid player. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like a lock. That's absolutely a lock
Yeah.
right there. That he's going to be a 10, 15-year veteran and everything
Yeah.
else. You don't have to worry about that position anymore.
Right.
So but I think overall, those two right there, they're pretty close. They're pretty close to 1-1A to me as far as their drafts. Like I said, at first, when you look at them, when I first looked at them, I was like, I mean, I liked the drafts, but I wasn't totally sold. But when you look at them later down, when you really
Yeah.
just sit back,
I thought
yeah,
they
I
had
thought they
solid
did.
drafts.
Yeah, I thought they did. They both had solid drafts. They filled holes. I guess the biggest thing to me with Tampa Bay is because you think about all the players they picked. They definitely picked players that were in the mold of what Jeff Teffer supposedly
Yeah.
wants to do, the offense
They
coordinator.
they they went offense, didn't
Yeah,
they?
yeah, they totally did something that Lovie Smith usually is
But
not that guy.
they went with defense and free agency.
Yeah, they did. They did, 'cause especially picking up
Michael
Verner.
Johnson and
Yeah,
Werner.
yeah, picking up Vernon and all that. So they kind of traded off. They traded off. They filled holes in both, using both effectively.
It's going to be
Uh,
fun to see what Tampa Bay does this year.
Me too, because I tell you, I mean, like Jeff Tefford he's kind of known as, some people kind of know him as an offensive genius. I'm not totally sure on that one.
Okay.
The Bloom, because years ago he kind of was. And I saw his offenses in Cleveland. In California, even
Right.
with Aaron Rodgers and guys like that. And he's not bad, but at the same time, I'm not so sold yet. Especially we're talking in the pro game, two different things.
Right.
That if he's gonna be that explosive
I'm
or that
not sold
strong.
either. I'm with you, Greg. I'm kind of anxious to see how he does.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what, they certainly went out and got him some nice little toys to make them
Hmm.
explosive.
Yeah, they gave him everything that he can't make an excuse that know that he can't make any excuses of why that offense cannot function. You know, so it comes down to. I mean, I don't know if they're going to start. I guess they're going to start McCowan over Glennon too. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, some interesting comments coming out about Mike Glennon. Obviously, a situation to watch. They did not do much there besides bringing in, and I agree with you. I think Josh is going to start, and
Hmm.
Glennon might push him if he struggles, but I don't. I kind of doubt it.
Yeah.
But if their offensive line, and they address that too, if
Yes.
their offensive line is better than it was last year, and I don't know
Hmm.
how it could be much worse,
Yeah.
then he should be okay. He's going to have possibly two very good wide receivers that
Hmm.
ultimately might rival Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey in
Hmm.
Chicago. I mean,
Yeah.
they definitely have the physical capabilities and the size and all of that.
That they do.
And then they should have a good running game. So it's going to be fun to watch. And I really like the tight end that they picked.
Yeah, yep, yep. He's kind of he's a guy out there who can probably play a little bit of wide receiver. He's got
Yeah.
a little speed to him and all. The other question I
Yeah,
keep
he can
hearing too
play
is that they
inline.
may,
There's no question.
yeah. So I think also the question too is that from what I understand that they may be taking carries away from Doug Martin. They may actually
Yeah.
split the running game a little bit with him, and I think the other pick I think is Charles Sims or whatever his name,
They,
the
they
running back.
Charles
Yeah,
Sims and Bobby
yeah,
Rainey's still there. They've got some good running backs on their
yeah.
roster.
Mike James, but I mean, there's a shot too that Rainey may not even make the team.
Yeah.
I mean, you might even look at between James.
You got to think with how many of their running backs went down last year that they're probably going to carry four.
Yeah, they're definitely. I'm pretty sure they're gonna carry four guys. So yeah, so Rainey may make it, but I don't know exactly who else they have as far as the running backs and as far as in the training camp right now either. So I don't know
Yeah.
exactly who all they have. But
Yeah.
if I understand too, so you wonder if they're going to be moving away from Doug Martin, maybe. And that's why they got Sims.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see. Sims is a guy that I think that they're kind of counting on to catch a lot of passes and
Hmm.
do a lot of different things for them. So we'll see. Well, let's talk about the Panthers. Give me your thoughts on the Panthers. Are you putting them above or below the Saints?
I think below. I think below because, like I said, you got the questions with Kevin Benjamin, and I don't know if they addressed their holes in that draft at
Yeah.
all. You know.
They made some odd. Let's odd. They made some odd picks.
Hmm.
I thought. Kelvin Benjamin, obviously the big one
Hmm.
in the first round, looks the part. Big guy. A
Yes.
lot of talk about how Cam Newton likes to throw the ball a little bit high, and now they went
Hmm.
out and they got him. They finally got him a guy who can get the jump ball and
Mm-hmm.
is he has not had that, and they still have Greg Olson.
Yes.
Let's not forget him. Kind of a little bit of an underrated guy, I think.
Yes,
I,
yeah, I can agree.
I don't think anybody expects Jericho Cotchery to do in Carolina what he did for the Steelers last year. That has to be an anomaly. I mean, he caught like what 10 touchdown passes, something like that. But
Yeah.
if he catches, I mean, what kind of stat line would you expect him to have? If he catches 5 or 6 touchdown passes, maybe has 600 or 700 receiving yards, wouldn't you consider that a
Oh,
success?
that's actually a very good season for him. For him, yes, that's actually a very good season. If he catches that many passes, then somebody really wasn't paying attention to him. Because he doesn't
Yeah.
look like that. Yeah, I don't look at him as a guy who's going to be separating necessarily from defensive backs that they got to stress over. If somebody
He's
covers him, I think he's pretty much out. They can take him
he's
out of
going to
there.
be kind of more of a possession kind of wide receiver, right? A
Right.
move the chains kind of guy.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, maybe like a kind of your third down guy, that type of
Hmm.
thing. So I mean, that
Yeah.
could be a possibility. But I mean, at the same time, if he gets 800 yards in a season and 5 or 6 touchdowns, then yeah, he played a better season than I thought he would.
Here are my winners in the NFC. My overall winners in the
Okay.
NFC. I picked the Bears, the Packers, the Vikings, the Bucks, and the Rams.
Yep, can't argue with any of those. I think every last one of them did very well. But I thought the Bears had a really nice little
I
draft
did
there
too.
themselves. Yeah,
I
so
really did.
yeah, so myself, I've always liked Mark Trestman, so I liked the pick when they picked him as coach because I
Yep.
thought he probably should have been an NFL head coach a while back, years ago. But I mean, he's an offensive mind, and he might be the right guy for Cutler. If he can
He may
get
be
through to
the
Jay
right guy
Cutler,
there.
yeah, if he can
Yeah.
get through to Cutler, and you already got
Well,
Alshon
look what
Jeffrey
Matt
Benson out.
Forte did last year.
Yeah, yeah, yep. So
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't disagree with that, although I did feel like Lovie Smith got a raw deal.
oh, don't get me wrong. Absolutely, I'm not saying that they were right in firing Lovey. I thought that. I mean, how many coaches win 10 games and get fired? You
Right?
know, I mean, that's kind of like that was like Wade Phillips going 14-2 and getting ousted. No, I'm sorry, Martin. Was it not Wade
Schottenheimer.
Phillips? Schottenheimer. Schottenheimer.
Yeah.
But Phillips was the defense coordinator at the time. I
North
apologize.
Turner.
That's right. For North Turner. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So.
kind of crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
so
really
when
is.
I see that, I'm like, I don't get that. So
Yeah.
either way.
My losers in the NFC were the Lions, the Cardinals, and the Panthers. And I like the Panthers. I just didn't their draft did not excite me. Although I do like
No.
Kelvin Benjamin. I really hope that he does very very
Yeah.
well. Do you agree with that? Would you
Oh, I can
pick?
agree with those. Yeah, I can agree with those actually because, I mean, the Cardinals. I don't know. They with Daryl Washington gone for the year,
Right.
they probably would have liked that draft back
They
because they
probably. You would
started
have
to
to
do something
think that they
different.
might know, because he would have been in the appeal stage, and
Hmm.
I don't know. Yeah,
But
it's an interesting deal.
yeah, I mean, but maybe they expected that it would be shortened. I don't know.
I don't know either. It's kind of, but they've got some linebackers. I think that they'll, yeah,
They have a
and
good defense.
they do, and there will be another round of free agency as teams start to, hone down their roster, and they
Exactly.
figure out what they need and what they don't need. Let's talk a little bit, just real quick, about the AFC South. I'll give you my winners
Okay.
in the AFC South. That's the Jaguars, the Ravens, the
Hmm.
Texans, the Jets, and the Raiders. I really liked what the Raiders did this year.
Hmm. And actually, I don't have any arguments with any of them. Yeah, the Raiders probably were a little bit of a surprise because they've always been known not to.
The
Now,
Raiders.
I'm usually scratching my head when they draft somebody. Like, who, you know? And I mean, myself, being a way back, back in the days, loving guys like Jim Plunkett and Kenny Stabler and all that. This was the team that always was really hit on, mostly like the free agents, the guys that that nobody wanted, and they were hit decent on draft picks too.
Yeah.
But that was those.
I remember the days when they regularly kicked the Titans' hind parts.
Yeah, and and those days are pretty much gone. So it's always kind of head scratching to see that team fall like that. So I mean, sometimes teams like that, I always think the league is a little bit better when you got the Raiders in the playoffs, or when you got the Raiders.
The league is better when the Raiders are pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is, and I really hope that they weren't. Yeah, I mean, they almost won. They almost beat the Titans. They were in a lot of games last year.
Yeah, they were. They were. I mean, I think they got to give Allen a little more time, Dennis Allen, give him a little more time there.
Yeah.
And the fact now that he's got Schaub at quarterback, so it's going to be interesting to see how that works out.
That quarterback position. Woof. My losers in the AFC, not a big surprise to Greg. The Titans I put down as losers. The Bengals and the Colts, I did not particularly care for their draft. I know a lot of people did not care for the Pats draft and for their pick of Garofalo in the second round, and I thought that the Broncos had a nice draft.
Yeah, well, now as far as the Patriots, also too, their first pick, the defensive lineman there, the defense tackle they picked easily, who's a talented player, but I think he was also often injured too. I think he always had injury issues. So I think a lot for some people that might have been a little worried that he probably he's drafted a little too high.
As good as the Patriots have been in free agency, the bloom is, to borrow a term from you, the bloom is a little off the rose in terms of their drafting capabilities, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, because you can think about all those years that Parcells used to trade back and pick up 4 or 5 more picks and 3 or 4 more picks of draft, and then he come in with 11, 12, 15 picks.
Yeah.
But the problem is they really haven't paid off to what you thought they would have, because you thought that some of the players they picked just didn't work out.
Yeah, you have to wonder if the Niners are going to run into that, how they're going to do, how they're going to fit all of their draft picks onto their roster. Is it going to be is it going to work out for them? But interesting. I really like the Jets draft. I'm a big Calvin Pryor fan. I thought that they did.
Love that kid. I think he's very good, and I think that was a great pick.
Yeah, I thought that they did very well. I was surprised and then not so surprised that the Jags picked Blake Bortles at number 3. I've talked about this before. I've always been a big believer that if you believe in a guy and you think he's your guy, you go out and get him. And I kind of admire that, although, but he's got a lot of potential, and if he fulfills at least a portion of that potential, he's going to be better than what they've had in a long, long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know Caldwell, the general GM, did say that he was supposed to sit down Bortles, for the year, and allow him to.
I'll see it to believe it.
I agree. I mean, you may see him mid-season. I think you see him like around mid-season, maybe later in the season, but. Basically when they kind of out of playoff contention, and then
I keep saying they're going to get in training camp, and they're going to be like Blake Bortles, Chad Henne, Blake Bortles, and they're going to be seeing the big arm Blake Bortles, and they're going to be seeing Chad Henne, who I like. Don't get me wrong, I like Chad Henne.
Right. Yeah.
But then you look at their schedule. Their first 4 games, you're going to be facing defenses that don't scare anybody, and. Do they just go ahead and say, he's our guy, we're going to play him? I don't know. It's going to be fun to watch that, too.
Well, to me, I don't understand. I don't have an argument if they sit him out for the year. Yeah. And the only reason I say that because you're talking about a guy who really still needs some seasoning.
He does.
He needs some seasoning and all that. And don't get me wrong. I understand with the bodies flying, you want him to have that game to slow down and go out there. Only thing I worry about sometimes with some guys, especially when you got if you got an offensive line that doesn't protect you very well.
Their offensive line should be better. I mean, it was not too bad last year, and they've put some time and effort into that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but I don't know. Like I said, it may make sense for them to let them season a little bit, let them
Yeah.
kind of sit back and watch it, even if it's not for the full year, even if but for a few games, and just let him kind of sit back and kind of get used to the calls, get used to things, kind
Yeah.
of so he can wrap his mind around everything, and then put him out there.
It
But
wouldn't surprise me either way. It
no, I
really
wouldn't
wouldn't.
either. It wouldn't either because I mean the likelihood too they're thinking about the money they're investing in, they probably have him out there. And if he shows that he can, if he's even anywhere close to Henny, where you gotta actually sit there and even think for a second that who's better, then you're gonna. I mean, I'm going with Bortles all the way. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't mention it. I don't know why. I liked what the Texans did too.
Me too.
I mean, you just don't pass on Jadeveon Clowney.
No, you don't.
He's a once in a generation kind of player. They did not address their quarterback situation until, well, fourth or fifth round with Tom
Yep.
Savage.
Savage. Yeah, I think
What are
Savage is
your
fourth.
What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know a whole lot about the guy. I didn't know. I didn't see him play, so I didn't see much of him myself. So it's always hard to judge on him because I like to see the guy in a game. Like when he's dropping back, when he's throwing. I want to see if he got command of the line.
Yeah.
Because to me, I kind of could tell when a guy really got command of the
Right.
offense and he knows what he's doing. And I mean, from the looks of it, he kind of shot up the draft board pretty quick. So what that tells me is that he impressed enough GMs and scouts to
Right.
get up to even get noticed because all of a sudden they start talking about the guy as he got closer
His
to the
workouts
draft.
must have been pretty impressive. I
Yeah,
agree.
so I apparently there's something there. And then number two, the fact that they got him at a fourth round pick. Now they got the great choice of they can sit him on the bench. Nobody's going to argue and complain about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if you sit Bortles on the bench, some people are going to have an argument about it. If you sit
Yeah,
Savage on the bench,
but I will say this, and I like the Amish canon. I like Ryan Fitzpatrick. Do not get me wrong.
hmm
But I had to watch him play last year, and I can promise you that if he continues to be the turnover machine
hmm
that he has been, there's going to be a lot of pressure to get somebody else in there. I still have some hopes for Case Keenum. I really would like to, an undrafted free agent
yeah,
quarterback. I really would like to see him do well, but their quarterback situation is concerning.
it is. Now Keenum myself, I like him. I kind of like him because I mean I saw him when he was in Houston as well,
Right, right.
and playing a few couple games, and I liked what I saw out of him for the most part. Now it was hard to call whether he was going to be like a top-notch NFL quarterback, but I thought
Yeah.
he might have a future, even if
He
he's
showed
coming off the
flashes.
bench as a backup. Yeah, he did absolutely. I thought he did,
He
and
did
so I
show
mean,
flashes, and gosh,
mhm,
the Texans handled the quarterback situation about as poorly as you possibly could
they
have.
did, they definitely did. So I think that whole situation there, I, it's hard to say what they're going to do with Savage or not. With Savage, I think it really comes down. He's got to show in training camp. You might see him start for all you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, O'Brien might pare down the playbook a little bit, and then just kind of
Yeah.
slow feed him, and then just if you pare it down or rely more on the running game. After all, you do have Arian Foster back there.
Yeah.
So I
It's gonna be
mean,
fun to watch.
yeah. So I mean, the best, and I always think a young quarterback's best friend is always the running game. If he can get a good running game going, now you've got the young quarterback can gain that confidence as he goes and really play. If he doesn't have that running game, then and he's got to rely on him. Ooh, you could be in trouble.
Yeah, I know. It should be a fun year in the AFC South. Greg,
Yes,
the hour always goes by so fast. I want to thank
it
you
does.
again. I want to
Yes,
thank you again, and definitely we need to do this again
yes.
as training camp as the the full pad as the pads go on and the hitting really starts. It won't be long. I mean,
No,
we'll
a
blink and it'll be
few weeks.
here.
Yeah, a few weeks. And
So I definitely want you to come back on and let's talk
absolutely.
about as we start to see how the rosters start to shape up. We'll
Hmm.
do a training camp version of this, and it should be very exciting to talk about what's
Yeah.
going on with the Saints. Tell everybody again where they can find you.
Find me at Intense GB on Twitter. You can see me there anytime, and feel free to follow me, and I'll follow back, and we can
He's
always chat.
a great follow, and a great sports fan, and a great football mind, and you should definitely interact with him.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on.
Well, I am Sharona. This is the Extra Point. We come to you live every Friday night, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, talking AFC South and NFC South from the National Gridiron Network, www.nationalgridironnetwork.com. Be sure to jump on there and check out all the latest articles, great articles, and all the other shows that are being produced. And check out my latest article on the Darrell Washington drug suspension and how the NFL failed to address the real elephant in the room. We will be back next Friday, hopefully talking some Jacksonville Jaguars, speaking of which, with one of the Jacksonville Jaguar writers. And if not, we'll talk about another AFC South team. Maybe get Brad Wells back in here to talk some Indianapolis Colts. But we'll be back regardless. Have a wonderful Friday night, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Bye bye.